we want you to know.
Last week's meeting between former U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin captured worldwide attention, not only because of the personalities involved, but also because it hinted at what could be a major turning point in the war in Ukraine, though the details remain complicated and contested. The talks, held in Anchorage, Alaska, were presented as informal, exploratory discussions, but their outcomes generated headlines across the globe. One of the most striking developments came when Putin reportedly signaled, for the first time, that he might accept NATO-style security guarantees for Ukraine, even if the country never formally joins the alliance. Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff called this a game-changing concession, explaining that such guarantees could mirror NATO's Article 5 principle, meaning that an attack on Ukraine would be treated as an attack on all countries providing the guarantee. This, in theory, could provide Ukraine with the protection it has long sought, while allowing Russia to claim it blocked Ukraine's formal entry into NATO. Yet, as is often the case in diplomacy, what looks like progress on the surface is tied to demands that Ukraine and the West find unacceptable. Putin's proposal included freezing the current battle lines and demanding that Ukraine permanently cede the Donetsk region, while offering limited troop withdrawals from parts of Kherson and Zaporizhzhia. He further insisted that Crimea, which Russia annexed in 2014, be formally recognized as Russian territory, a demand Ukraine has consistently rejected. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky responded swiftly, making it clear that Ukraine would not trade its sovereign land for promises of peace. He repeated his long-standing call for binding, enforceable security guarantees, not symbolic words or political theater. In response to these sharply opposing positions, Trump stepped forward with his own idea, proposing a direct summit between Putin and Zelensky, followed by a trilateral meeting including himself as a mediator. Some European leaders cautiously welcomed this suggestion, acknowledging that direct talks could help break the diplomatic deadlock, but many remain wary of Trump's unpredictable approach. While Trump has long promoted his reputation as a master negotiator, critics fear that his eagerness to claim a breakthrough might lead him to accept terms that compromise Ukraine's sovereignty. Adding weight to the discussion, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio clarified that the administration is not interested in a temporary ceasefire that merely freezes the conflict, but instead seeks a comprehensive settlement that could bring genuine stability to the region. Still, Trump himself sent mixed signals throughout the week. At one point, he hinted that territorial trade-offs might be necessary, suggesting peace could be within reach if Ukraine conceded certain areas. But he later walked back those remarks, insisting that only limited adjustments might be considered, while emphasizing that his ultimate goal is long-term stability, not surrender. This inconsistency has become a central theme in the reaction to the Anchorage summit, with analysts warning that Trump's lack of a clear doctrine could embolden Russia while leaving Ukraine exposed to further risks. Beyond the policy debates, the optics of the summit were carefully staged to create a sense of momentum. Anchorage was chosen as a symbolic neutral ground between the United States and Russia, and the event was marked by military flyovers, ceremonial arrivals, and a series of tightly managed photo opportunities. Trump, true to form, highlighted these moments on social media and in press conferences, painting the talks as evidence of his ability to open new pathways where others had failed. Yet critics argue that beneath the spectacle lies a troubling reality. No concrete agreements were signed, no binding framework was established, and Ukraine's most urgent concerns remain unresolved. For many observers, the Anchorage meeting was more about testing the waters and gauging reactions than delivering substantive results. Putin used the occasion to showcase his willingness to appear flexible without truly compromising on his core objectives, while Trump positioned himself as the indispensable mediator who could deliver peace. Zelensky, on the other hand, remained firm, stressing that Ukraine would never agree to territorial concessions, no matter how they are packaged. The introduction of NATO-style security guarantees is nonetheless a significant development, as it could, in theory, reshape the security architecture of Eastern Europe. Such guarantees, if credible, might deter future Russian aggression and give Ukraine a stronger sense of security without forcing NATO to extend formal membership. However, the devil is in the details. Who would provide these guarantees? Would the United States, the European Union, and perhaps even other allies like the United Kingdom commit their forces to defend Ukraine? Would these guarantees require approval from national parliaments, potentially weakening their credibility? And would Russia respect such an arrangement, or would it see them as a provocation disguised as compromise? These unanswered questions underscore the complexity of turning diplomatic ideas into lasting peace. Reactions to the summit have been divided. Some commentators argue that Trump deserves credit for opening a conversation that had been stagnant for months. They note that no Western leader had successfully pushed Putin to even discuss NATO-related guarantees for Ukraine until now. Others, however, see danger in Trump's approach, warning that his eagerness for a deal could play directly into Putin's hands. They fear that legitimizing Russia's control of Donetsk or formalizing its hold on Crimea would weaken international law, undermine Ukraine's sovereignty, and encourage other powers to pursue similar strategies of territorial aggression. For European leaders, the stakes are particularly high. On one hand, they want to avoid a protracted war that continues to drain resources and destabilize the continent. On the other, they are acutely aware that appearing weak could embolden Moscow and fracture NATO unity. As a result, many European officials are watching Trump's moves with both cautious optimism and deep unease. For Ukraine itself, the message remains consistent. Sovereignty and territorial integrity are not negotiable. Zelensky's rejection of territorial concessions reflects not only his personal stance, but also the will of the Ukrainian people who have endured immense sacrifices in defense of their nation. For them, any compromise that legitimizes Russia's land grabs would be seen as a betrayal. At the same time, Ukraine recognizes the importance of strong international support and therefore continues to push for binding commitments that go beyond political promises. This tension between Ukraine's firm red lines and Russia's unyielding demands leaves little room for immediate resolution, but it also sets the stage for further diplomatic maneuvering in the months ahead. Ultimately, last week's Trump-Putin talks were less about signing a peace deal and more about shaping the narrative for what comes next. Putin tested the waters by floating the idea of security guarantees while still clinging to his territorial ambitions. Trump seized the stage, presenting himself as the only leader capable of bringing the two sides together. Zelensky held firm, reminding the world that Ukraine's sovereignty is not for sale. The result was a complex mix of hope, skepticism, and frustration. For now, the promise of NATO-style guarantees and the possibility of a future trilateral summit provide a glimmer of progress. But the road to peace remains long and uncertain. Whether these discussions mark the beginning of a genuine settlement or merely another round of high-profile diplomacy, without lasting results will depend on the willingness of all sides to move beyond symbolism and confront the hard truths of compromise, sovereignty, and security. Until then, the world watches closely, knowing that the decisions made in these meetings could reshape not just the future of Ukraine, but the broader balance of power in Europe and beyond.